What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the shed. My name is John McGrath and this is part 16, I think, of this custom guitar build. Now we're going to crack on with the frets and finishing the fretboard. I'm going to put an inlay on the 12th fret. That'll be the only inlay on the guitar. I'm going to use a piece of copper to do that. So I've been practicing on the offcut of the fretboard, and I'll show you the technique that I'm using. We'll get in for a closer look in a minute. So yeah, we're going to crack on with this now. I've ordered a tone bar or a ferrule bar to go in here, so I'm going to route that out just because I don't want to be looking at unevenly spaced ferrules at the back of the guitar. After putting all this much work in, we might as well go the extra mile and make sure that it's perfect. So I have one of those. I have a router template for it coming as well, so that'll be routed out, so we won't have to worry about these holes. So that's the next thing. Right, so let me get you guys in for a closer look, and we'll see about putting in this inlay. Well, you should be able to see from there, hopefully. I'll try not to get myself too much in the way of this. So we have our 12th fret marked out and we have the inlay marked out here. So I have it centered in between my two frets, and it's just going to be a copper inlay. So it's a piece of copper that I've cut out, and it's just going to sit there like that, and that's going to be the only fret marker on this guitar. Now I've been practicing with the offcut piece of the fretboard, and we have it in nicely there. So what I done was I tried to use the Dremel tool, or something similar to a Dremel tool. It wasn't very neat, it wasn't very controllable. You'd really want like a little router jig for those, I think, to stop it skipping on you. So what I have done is I've cut it exactly the width of my chisel. And so I'm going to use the chisel now to take this piece out. So I've already practiced on a bit of cherry. That's nice and neat, worked out well. So I'm going to try an attempt to replicate that. So that's the plan. So that's the first thing we're going to get done. Get that copper inlay in. Use some epoxy then to fix it in place. Once that's in and dry, we can start fitting the frets. Now I've sanded this fretboard back to a 400 grit, so it's lovely and silky smooth. So yeah, we're just about ready for frets now. So let's crack on with this inlay and we'll get it set in place. So if I go quiet, it's because I'm concentrating, and I might just put this on fast forward. Alright guys, we have that fit in nicely now, so what I'm going to do is mix a bit of epoxy. I just have some Gorilla Glue epoxy I'm going to use and mix up and to stick this in. So I'm going to mask off the area around it now, and then we'll get ready. We'll stick it with this and we leave it for a while, then we come back and we can look at our frets. So that's the next plan. Let's do it. Right, we have our piece of copper ready to go. We have our fretboard masked off. I'm just going to use the blister pack just to mix my epoxy, and then I'm just going to use another little bit of copper here just to put it in as neat as I can do. So let's mix a bit of this. We don't need much. Okay, we're onto the frets. I've masked off the inlay. The epoxy has set, but I just want to protect the copper now, so I'm just masked it off there. I'm going to use a technique that I saw Ben Crow use over on Crimson Guitars when he was doing his inlays. I saw him using this No More Nails. He rubbed this into the fret slots before he hammered in his frets. And he said the reason he was using this stuff is because it's so easy to clean up afterwards. You can use super glue and other glues. There's plenty of other glues on the market that you can use, but I'm going to actually try this technique now and see if it's easier to use. Our frets are here, so we've some genuine Fender made frets. Now you can buy rolls of fret wire. You don't have to buy them like this, but these are good quality frets. They're already pre-radiused and cut, So this is a 9.5 radius going to a 12 inch radius, and these are radius to 9.5, so that'll help us a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start from this end. I'm just going to rub in some of that no more nails into the frets. I'm going to hammer in my first 3, wipe it off, and go along that way. So what we'll do is we'll do the first 3, then we'll probably hit fast forward to the rest. So let's do that. So I have a cloth just handy. Just damp it up a small bit, just for wiping off the glue. Now I've already tested this on the offcut of the fretboard. I've rubbed some in, wiped it off with a damp cloth, and it works. So that's what we're going to do. So I just want to push that into my frets. Just like so. Try and get it in there. And this is just to fill up the gaps in between, in the timber, between the fret and the timber and stuff. It's not actually to hold the fret, because the fret should be able to hold, the fretwork should be able to hold itself in. At least that's the theory anyway. So let's go. Let's start with our first one. Actually, I have one out here. Let's start with this one. Just line him up. And they say tap this side and tap this side and work your way back into the middle. So we will do that. Just like that. Line up this guy. Okay. Okay guys, we're on to day 2 of doing this fretboard, and it's unbelievably hot today again, so I'm sweating like I don't know what in this shed. But I want to dress the end of these frets now, so I'm working my way down the fretboard. Now I'm no expert at this, so take what I say here with a pinch of salt. Those other luthier channels will show you in detail how to do this, but I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what I'm doing. So I'm using my fret end dressing file. You can see it's rounded off at the end here. That's just to protect the fretboard when you're working the edges of your fret. So it's nice and simple. These are nickel frets, so you can remove a lot of material quickly, so just be careful. So I'm just going to work this fret back to the edge of my fretboard. I'm just going to dress the edges and just feel for how smooth it is then. And I can do the final touch up and sanding after I have all this stuff removed. But just this is just a quick demonstration what I'm doing. I'll do a couple of frets and then I'm just going to kick on down the fretboard because I have to get out of the shed. It's unbelievably hot. Right, so again, like I say, I'm just going to work the end of the fret. As you can see, you can remove a lot of material quite quickly. And there's a knack to this, like everything. It's just something you have to practice to get good at. And I certainly practice at it. So just working that fret back to the fretboard. Obviously when I nipped it off, I've left some protruding. So we just want to put a small chamfer on the edge of it. And then we just want to work our corners of our fret using our round end just over our fretboard. Just to knock off the corners. It doesn't take much. Again, you can remove a lot of material on this nickel fairly quickly. Just have a feel. Okay, that feels pretty smooth. Right, and on to the next one. Just so on and so on like that. Alright guys, I've just finished the initial dressing of the ends of these foils. I've just removed the masking tape because I noticed I had just one or two along the board where the edges are just springing up and not seated properly. So I'm just going to attend to that before I level the frets, because if they move up and down as I'm running the leveling beam over them, then obviously they won't be level. I could end up with a high spot or a fret that's moving and it will cause buzzing. So I just want to seat them properly. So I'm going to use a bit of high viscosity super glue just to wick it down into the fret slot. And then I'm going to take my radius block and just clamp them down, just to get them pressed down nicely. I'm just going to take a little bit of candle wax and just put it on the fretboard, just so it's easier to get the super glue off if any of it does happen to stay. So I'm just a quick rub of this, just down along beside the fret. I'm just going to wick a bit of super glue now in along the side of these, and then I'm just going to clamp it. So nice and simple. Okay guys, I've remasked the fretboard and now I'm going to level the frets. Now I've been over all these frets with my fret rocker, and they're actually pretty good. They're very, very even. There's just one or two little high spots here and there. So it's not going to take very much to put this fretboard right. So it's going to be a couple of passes with the leveling beam. Now before we do that, you need to check with your straight edge to make sure that your fretboard is perfectly flat. And then you can begin your leveling process. I just have a leveling beam here with some 240 grit sandpaper on the end of it. I'm just going to take a couple of light passes running parallel to my center line, not to the edge of my fretboard. So you don't want to be running, keeping the beam parallel with the edge of your fretboard. You want to keep it parallel with your center line and run that way, okay, because you get conical frets otherwise. Right, so like I say, this is just going to take a couple of passes because these aren't very, there's not much height difference in any of these frets, which is pretty good. So I've just put a red marker on the top of them, and then once the red marker's gone off all the frets, I know that I'm level. So we're just going to do that now. Okay, so I've taken all the marker off the tops of my frets, off the center of all my frets, so I'm pretty good there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to build up some masking tape on the 15th fret, and I'm going to create fall off for the back fret. So I'm going to put on about 10 layers of masking tape just over the 15th fret, and I'm just going to slant the back frets off slightly, and just ever so slightly, just to create a little bit of fall off so it can help eliminate fret buzz. So that's what we're going to do now. Okay, so I've built up the masking tape now on my 15th fret, which will just give me a slight angle back the way, and I'm just going to run my leveling beam and just create a small bit of fall off. Okay, that should do it. That should do it. Right, now I need to reapply marker to all the tops of these. I need to get my crowning foil, my triangular foil, this guy right here, and I need to, because I've flattened all the tops of these now, I need to re-crown all these and get them back to a nice point. So that's our next step. Right, so now I'm just going to take my crowning foil, which is a triangular foil, and all the corners have been ground flat or rounded off, just so you don't damage your fretboard. I just take this then and I work it either side of my fret until I have a nice thin red line in the middle of my fret. So I've coloured all the top of my frets with marker, and now I'm just going to work it either side just to re-crown them, just so I get a nice point on each of my frets. So very simple, just a little bit time consuming, that's all. And so I'm going to crack on with this now. So work each side nice and slowly, and let's do it. Okay, now that we have all our frets crowned, I'm going to take a maple block. I've just cut a groove in this maple block, and I'm going to start off with some 400 grit sandpaper, work my way up to 1000 grit, then I'm going to use the fret rubbers, and I have to get all these frets polished. So again, it's just a bit more elbow grease, a little bit of time, and we've got to take all the tool marks out of these frets now and get them polished up. So maple block with a groove in it, nice little simple tool. Alright, next I'm going to move on to this, it's a super fine finishing sponge. You get these in any auto factors or car places. They're used for just finishing paintwork and stuff. They're super fine, and there's a bit of give in a sponge, so it's nice for working over frets. So I'm going to use this, and then we're going to finish with the fret rubbers. So more elbow grease. Alright guys, our fretboard is crowned and polished up. We finished everything off with these fret rubbers from Crimson Guitars. They go through various grits. Just give you a quick look at them there. So the camera will focus on that, will it? Here we go. Yeah, they're just fret rubbers. They just come in different grits. They're nice and simple to use. From coarse, medium to fine to super fine. And they seem to do a good job. Again, they're just like a razor's really that you run over your frets. So now, I have to clean up this fretboard. Unfortunately, it's so hot here today that the glue on my masking tape failed and it's really stuck into the fretboard, so I have a bit of a mess here now that I need to put right. It's not too often you can say that about living in Ireland, that things get too hot, but they're too hot today, and I'm going to spend a bit of time now cleaning this up, and then we'll get back to you. Alright guys, after many hours of sanding and fretting and everything else, this fretboard is almost ready. I just want to get a bit of oil into it now just to protect it before I move any further. So I'm actually going to try some of this Crimson Guitars finishing oil. I've used it on guitars before, but I'm actually going to try it on the fretboard now and see how we get on. So I'm going to put some into the fretboard. I'm going to use a bit of 400 grit sandpaper just to work it in, just to do a bit of grain filling. And let's see how this cherry turns out. Can you guys see that? You can. This bit there. Right. Okay, let's do this. Oh, too much. Not to worry. It'll be going on the rest of the guitar eventually anyway, so don't worry about that for now. Just gonna work it in. This stuff really soaks into the timber. You'll see it disappearing into it. It penetrates in pretty well. So now, I just want a bit of 400 grit. Guys, that's it for this episode. I hope wherever ye are the weather is as glorious as it is here. As always, it is an absolute oven in this shade. But our fretboard is done. We have our first 2 coats of oil got into it now. I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out so far. So we're on to the finishing the body next. I need to route out a tone bar in the back of this now to cover that problem we had with the fouls. So that will all be sorted and it'll be perfect when we're done. I'm going to route out for our control cavity cover, so we'll get those 2 routing jobs done in the next episode. I'm going to make a copper control cavity cover, so we'll do that as well, and then we might get the final sanding and start the finishing process on this body. So that's going to be the next episode, and possibly the one after that or the one after that, we will be playing this guitar, so it'll be hardware installed, and then we get to see what it sounds like, which is the best part of all. So yeah. Hopefully you're liking the series so far. Hopefully it's been informative and some way helpful for you. Hopefully the pitfalls I've fallen into will help you not fall into the same ones. And yeah, I'm going to have a nice cold beer now. I've been John McGrath. This is Man in the Shade. We'll catch you in the next one.